Hello, my name is Lightsey-Carlson. I am in Dr. Crenshaw's children's literature class, and this week's assignment was to pick some stories that we thought would be helpful in the classroom, and why we would pick these stories and how we thought they would be helpful. So I picked several books, and they all revolve around slavery. The important thing to understand is that all of these books kind of represent in some way what our country went through and the fight for freedom that the African American people had to do. And it is, all of these stories kind of showcase like the inspiration, the courage, the triumph of what they had to go through, and the fact that they didn't even get to stay with their own same families. They didn't, they were treated like commodities. They were not people. They were, property. And therefore, they never were ever given the same rights. Some of the stories revolve around the education and the fight for education, the Sam Crow laws, and some of them are about the Underground Railroad. Some of them, for instance, it's about learning how to become free and what that meant. It meant taking away, the right of a slave master, being somebody who put a roof over your head or food in your bellies, whether it be good roof or good food, it didn't matter. Their responsibility was to put a roof over your head and put food in your belly. But if you were a free man, that became your responsibility. So that's what these books are about. The first book is called Heart and Soul by Kadir Nelson. This book is, again, it's about 6 to 10, years of age. And this book really gives you the inspiration and hope that the people had, and the fight that they fought about getting their children educated. This is a story where they had to, really push those boundaries and face the rejection, the fears of the people, because their kids were not getting educated, and they knew without education they could never be more than a slave, and they wanted their freedom so badly. And so that's what this story is about. It's about that, unwavering courage that they faced. My next one was called Freedom Train: The Story of Harriet Tubman. This story was by far probably one of my favorites. It's geared towards about 8 years old, but this story attracts many because she was owned by a slave owner. She worked on a plantation. She tried to escape. She got caught. She got brought back. She got beaten and got a concussion from that, and took her a while to finally escape. And when she did, her route that took her up north actually helped her in the aspect that she created lots of friends and lots of people who could help her. And in doing this, when she got to the north, she got a job. She became self-sufficient. And that is so important to understand about this story, is the fact that she was self-sufficient. Because while it's great to be free, if you can't provide, you truly are not free. And that is the definition, the break there for being owned versus being free. And she did that. She fought in the army. She became a nurse. She opened up the first African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. She taught other women to be nurses, and she taught them the difference between being free and being self-sufficient and free. And, and the greatest thing about her story is she could never read or write. She achieved all of this without, having the very basic, essential things that we think in education every child should have. Every person should be able to read and write. She couldn't do all that, and she achieved that. She achieved a great many things. She helped get over 300 slaves into freedom, and, helped them understand how to get jobs. And, and this story is so great for kids to hear because it shows the power that she held. Freedom was so important to her that she did this without having education. And it just goes to prove that whole, if you really want something and you really work for it, you can get it. But it's also a story about slavery and the fact that how wrong it was, and what our country did, and what they went through, and what the African Americans experienced in this country because of that. And another book that I chose was Henry's Freedom Box. This is another story about slavery, and it's also about the Underground Railroad. It was written by Ellen Levine, and it's about grades, 2nd through 5th grade. And the neat thing about this story is, I guess neat's not the word I should use, but interesting is that this is a story that really, really showcased that slaves were commodities. Commodities that, they didn't stay with their same families. They were split up. He was split up as a young child from his family. As an adult, he was split up from his wife. He eventually would gain freedom, but he did this by putting himself in a crate and labeling it to the North. And when he got to the North, that is when he became free. And another thing about slaves is that they do not, they don't have birthdays. No one marks when they're born. So he never even knew how old he was. And he decided that when he was free, the day he became free, that was his date of birth. That was his birthday. And that is what he celebrated. And that's what's so neat about this story. And my last book is If You Lived When There Was Slavery in America by Anna Kama. This is geared towards high school kids. And I say that because it's a story about questions. How did they live? Where did they live? Who did they live with? What happened to them? This is a story, that high school kids tend to think about. They tend to question. They tend to ask things. They want to understand more. And so this book is actually a book of questions, and it kind of gives that reference. So that's those are the books that I chose. And again, I chose them because they were all about slavery, and this is a very interesting time in our history for me. And I find it intriguing that this is something our country went through, that, our country was founded on religious freedoms, and yet we, managed to turn around and enslave a whole nation of people. And so I find it very interesting, when I read about it and how they fought back and what they have managed to accomplish. So, thank you for listening. And again, this was Lightsey-Carlson. Thank you.